Hey guys, and welcome to another distribution run through and another Linux Mint distribution run through. I know I've been doing a ton of these on my channel and there hasn't been that much difference between them, but since I am basically now at this point going through the list of Linux Mint distributions as per your demands, I would like to add, then I'm not going to do all of them except XFCE. And the reason I'm not going to do all except XFCE is, first of all, Linus Torvalds actually uses XFCE as his primary desktop environment on, I believe it's a Fedora distribution, but I could be wrong on that one. But also I've got a soft spot for XFCE. Now I'm an LXDE guy, and good, if you don't know what these initialisms mean, you are probably quite confused right now. But yeah, and XFCE isn't a million miles away from LXDE. In fact, XFCE to me is probably the second best out there. Only problem I've actually had with XFCE is that it's a little bit quirky when it comes to a few occasional bugs. Not massively. Like little changes, maybe an applet might disappear out of there. Nothing, oh, sorry, I'm just knocked the microphone. Nothing like quirky, nothing too like deal breaking or anything like that. But definitely something to make me appreciate the perfect stability of LXDE. LXDE, I have never had anything go wrong with LXDE. I've had a few like features that I would kind of expect to be there, not be there, and I've had to find some way around that because LXDE, again, it's even more lightweight than XFCE. It's about as lightweight as you're going to get and still get a full desktop environment. And when I say a full desktop environment, like the things that are missing for me are very, very, very minor things. So, okay, XFCE. Just right out of the box, looks beautiful. XFCE has traditionally not perhaps been the best looking desktop environment out there. That being said though, there are some eye candy options for those of you that are interested. But I think, and please feel free to correct me if I'm stereotyping here, that people who tend to use XFCE are perhaps a little more interested in usability than eye candy. Could be wrong there. And also, don't get me wrong, I appreciate eye candy as much as the next person when it comes to a distribution. I do like the semi-transparent effects or whatever, but they do sort of grate on me over time. But I do like the fact that people make efforts to put them in there, and I think that there is value in making an operating system look nice, especially, again, when it appeals to trying to make Linux in general, Linux-based operating systems. If you're going to make them mainstream, you are going to have to bring in eye candy, even if it's not something that I or other sort of OS enthusiasts might consider to be particularly important. Some people will consider it to be a deal breaker, maybe even not consciously. You go around asking everyone that uses their operating system how important is the actual look of an operating system. 99% of people will say not very at all. But when you bring in eye candy, you also bring this degree of polish and this atmosphere of professionalism, which I think is something that really does change how people look at a distribution. Okay, so Linux Mint XFCE, and like I say, it looks very clean. Comes with a panel. XFCE comes with a panel. Very Linux Mint style panel. You can stretch that right out if you wanted big panel. Big panel. I don't know. I don't like big panels. Don't like moving my mouse. I don't like my mouse to make longer journeys than it has to. Again, like I say, it might sound like a bit of an OCD point, but to me, efficiency is how long it takes you to get your program up and running. And if you have to move from mouse to keyboard, I consider that to be something of a fault because, again, it takes time, but it also breaks your flow of work. But that being said, I do like the option there that you can actually be able to search for some LibreOffice stuff. But also, I like, if you can stick with the mouse, which you can do, you can just go droop, droop, LibreOffice stuff, multimedia. Like the responsiveness on this one, actually. This is very quick, and I like the look of it. I won't lie, this is probably more preferable than Mate. I think Mate is just reinventing XFCE at this point. Just looking at this. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comment section below. But XFCE and Mate, both... oh yeah, when I did ask in an earlier video what really was the difference in Cinnamon and Mate, and one of you guys said that there's actually quite a big difference in system resources. So I'll certainly, that's definitely a thing. But Mate or MATE or Mate, whatever they sort of call it, again, it's kind of just like sort of reinventing XFCE from what I can tell. But anyway, Okay, so without further ado, let's crack on with the install process. Now, I actually had to cut away for a moment there and actually readjust my virtual hard disk. I set this virtual hard disk at 8 gigabytes, which is what I usually do. Unfortunately, though, there's a bit of a quirk with this system. It requires 8.6 gigabytes of available disk drive space. That's a bit unusual. The KDE version, which I installed actually on the very same virtual disk, so we certainly know that it fit within the 8 gig there. For some reason, the XFCE version requires a little more space, and that is quite unusual. Actually, just going to have a quick look here. It's the same install bundle by and large. Yeah, it comes with the GIMP, comes with accessories. Now that is interesting, and I can't quite place that. It comes with a full library. Again, it comes with VLC, which is something that a lot of people often find themselves installing afterwards, but not many distributions actually take the initiative to actually put it on as part of the bundled software, but Mint does, and that's one of the reasons why I like Mint as much as I do. So this is the exact same install process as with the Cinnamon, the Mate versions. I think those are the only two. The KDE, of course, has its own install process, which is very similar, but just as user-friendly and just as straightforward, but it just, for some reason, has its own install process. Yep, so this is all same old, same old. I know it's a short password, log in automatically. Because, yeah, like you say, you usually associate XFCE with being more lightweight, more quicker with system resources and things like that. Maybe even a little less on the disk space as well. I mean, it might not be the first thing that you jump to with a lightweight distribution, but I think maybe that's because it's assumed or expected or whatever. But again, a little bit interesting there, a little bit interesting. Do you really need a Mate and an XFCE set of distributions? Probably not. I think this is probably, XFCE actually is a community built one, so what we can sort of deduce from that is that we know that the community demands an XFCE spin, which came out a couple of days after the KDE spin as well. But again, I think with this XFCE, I don't think you really need Mate. I think they are so similar, so near identical, that and so similar on the amount of system resources that they use, I think you're really reinventing the wheel. I think you're sort of, you're forking various projects and ending up with the same result, but with twice as amount of work you're putting in. I don't know. That's just a thought. Do you guys see a difference in XFCE to Mate? I call it Mate because that's how it's spelt in the UK. I know it's supposed to be pronounced Mate, but I'm not saying Mate. I'd rather just stick to using XFCE all my life if that's the alternative. But yeah, I mean, this is pretty identical. Well, not near identical to the Cinnamon as well. Like Linux Mint follow a user interface pattern, a path, and it's good to do that. It's good to have that continuity and that consistency and those laid out, straightforward user interface ideas that you can move towards, rather than just a let's try and make it as shiny as possible and see type of attitude that some distributions do have. Or a lot of distributions, of course, they make the distributions for themselves. And sometimes they can be a little bit on the insular side. But I think Linux Mint is a particularly good distribution across the board at discussing these things with the community, and I think they listen to the community in a great way, and this is reflected most visibly in the software bundles and most immediately. But Linux Mint has really not changed much over time. The GNOME 2 release is near identical to this release, and this release is near identical. There are some differences to the Cinnamon, the Mate, in terms of what it looks a little bit, but like if you can use one, you can use the other, no matter how much or little you know about computers. Yeah, like I say, this consistency and continuity is something that Linux Mint developers clearly strive for, which kind of, I guess, makes me put it as a talking point that the KDE spin has its own install process. That is something that just breaks that continuity albeit fine. Maybe it's an install process that uses the Qt libraries or whatever. Maybe there is like an under the hood reason why they've included. There's obviously a reason, but and I would imagine it's an under the hood reason. I can't imagine that KDE people would really care which way or the other. I think the decision might have come from something that uses existing Qt libraries that already come bundled, or whatever. But yeah, definitely, like XFCE, mate, I'm starting to think that they're overlapping in a very serious way. This panel is, for all intents and purposes, like the icons here on the right-hand side, Cinnamon and Mate, they're on the left. It's the same freaking panel, though, really. If we look at it, it's not. There's not much difference or special. The software bundle's pretty identical. And again, I'm saying it like it's not a good thing. It is. It's a fantastic thing. It's something essential to bringing Linux Mint to the masses, to put some kind of grandiose political point to it. But yeah, like if it's going to go mainstream, it's going to need solid UI, like a good solid idea of where the UI is heading, and the fact that the last 10 distributions of Linux Mint have been near identical, at least the last 10. I mean, you could even take it back as far as goodness knows how far back you could take it, but it's it really hasn't changed that much. It's easy enough that anyone can just pick it up and run with it. And I think by and large the only criticism I ever really have with Linux Mint is that it just isn't deployable everywhere. It's not deployable on really quite sort of like 10, 15-year-old machines. I think it's just a little bit too resource hungry for that. Not by much, and like I say, it's not a huge culprit. If you're installing it on a 5-year-old machine, that's fine. But like if you go down the 10, 15, you have to really go with Lubuntu. And Lubuntu is, in my opinion, the perfect deployment for all incredibly lightweight requirements. And I recently made a Lubuntu deployment 1404 on a machine that was about 10 years old, and it originally ran XP, and it turned a virus-ridden, because my god, since they stopped supporting XP, my lord, the viruses, it basically turned a virus-riddled near brick into a the computer that it was 10 years ago. The computer in question was being used for the regular old Office-y, internet browser type stuff. It wasn't used for any kind of specific unusual purpose. And the person that wanted me to take a look at it was actually thinking about buying a new machine, spending about £600-700 on a brand new machine. Because I don't know, like I guess like we have it in our heads now that we have to upgrade hardware every 10 years when we don't. Like that machine can do the same thing that it did 10 years ago, the Office-y thing, the Office-y type stuff. It's made from pretty damn good hardware. Like if the hardware's lasted for 10 years minus a few replacements here and there, that's a good machine. Don't throw it out. Like, whoever was putting that machine together knew what they were doing. So, and the machine, by and large, that didn't even cost £600-700 when that machine was new. It wasn't top of the range when it was bought, and they were thinking about spending £600-700 just to upgrade to a Windows 7 machine that does exactly the same thing of what it did then. I said, fuck no, just stick on Lubuntu, spend an afternoon getting to know how it works, and you won't need to spend that £600-700. £600-700 in British pounds, that's about $1,300 US dollars. That's a lot of money to save if you can just do it. And Lubuntu did. Lubuntu saved those folks the upgrade process, because they're like you don't need, if you're not using multimedia, and if you're not using if you're not playing games and you're not using multimedia, you don't need a fast computer. That's like, you don't. You can use a second-hand 10-year-old computer, and that will do your job for you. Like, we do have it in our heads that we have to spend hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of pounds on computers when we don't. A second-hand £100 computer, will do the job that most people require out of their machines. But then again, it's the adverts, and it's the corporate nature of the proprietary software and hardware world as well. But there you go. And also, of course, not to mention that with XP and a machine that old, getting hardware to run on it, getting your wireless cards working on it, getting your printer working, getting your scanner working. That's a nightmare, right? A 10-year-old computer. Do you remember the hassle that we went through getting hardware working on those machines back then? Yeah, right. One deployment of a Lubuntu installation. And again, like I say, I know I'm doing a Linux run through at this point and talking about Lubuntu. The same thing would apply, like, you know, with Linux Mint, of course. They all run on the same base. But one deployment of Lubuntu, 2 hours later, up and running. 2-hour deployment. That machine doesn't need to be touched now for another at least 2 years. Lubuntu has a 3-year support cycle on it, but Ubuntu has a 5-year one. I know some of you guys were debating about the support release schedule of Lubuntu. For some reason, it's 3 years, not the 5 years that's supported by Ubuntu. To be honest, it's a desktop machine. Either is fine. 3 to 5 years, probably be upgraded into 2.5. And yeah, like, I mean, none of the aggro that we went, you know, that you go through with the XP machine to get wireless drivers and all that kind of stuff up and running. Lubuntu took care of that, bam, right out of the box. Install the codecs, bam, right out of the box. It's adding the PPAs took 10, 20 minutes, I don't know. And yeah, we had, you know, wireless out of the box, scanner out of the box, printer out of the box. Printer wasn't out of the box. You had to install the HP device extras, but that was like, again, 5 minutes, no problem. Possibly possibly could have been a little more, like, you know, it was easy for me, but possibly if I wasn't there, sort of guiding them through the process, might have been a little tricky, might have required a little bit of Googling to try and get the answers done. So, like I say, there are perhaps a few strides that Linux can still make in the usability side of things, but like I say, Lubuntu just revived a 10-year-old machine and saved a couple of people $600-700 quid, $1,300 US. That's, you know, that's a big feat for Ubuntu. Come on, we don't need these extras. I don't. Yeah, sometimes it just wants to install all the languages. Come on, skip it. We don't. All these language. Like I need one language, maybe Welsh, two, maybe two. But I don't know. It does. It wants to install because that's one of the things about Ubuntu, isn't it? Eventually, Ubuntu want to make it so that anyone who speaks any language, everything from, you know, Yiddish to Welsh to Gaelic, you know, that no matter what language you speak, you'll be able to crack open an Ubuntu distribution. It should be able to work out the box. That's their dream, and they're perfectly, you know, an admirable one as well, I guess. So so like I say, these install processes as well, very quick, very speedy. I remember when you used to do a Windows reinstall or an install, and it used to take you the afternoon. No more. This is the second install video. I did KDE earlier today actually, and we can restart. And yeah, so I did KDE earlier today on this very same virtual machine with the very same settings, but slightly tweaked because obviously the hard disk was that was a thing. Okay, so as usual with these things, I actually have to physically remove the attachment here if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just going to quickly take off the monitor capture. And then I have to, yeah, power off, and then yeah, like physically remove. Well, I say physically remove, virtually remove in, you know, and then yep, and then I can crack on the monitor capture again, and there we go. Just the quirks of running in a virtual machine. But like I say, again, no surprises. Like Linux Mint at this stage just couldn't phase me less. It does exactly what you want it to do straight out of the box every single time. No exceptions. It focuses on stability, a common UI that we have come to know over the last couple of decades and become very, very comfortable with. And it doesn't want to challenge that, because the operating systems shouldn't challenge that. They shouldn't have to find something new to pull out the bag and sell you every couple of years. It should be able to just work out of the box, and that's what Linux Mint does, and that's what Linux Mint does very, 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 very well. They do it so well that they have many, many distributions that do the exact same thing very, very well. They do this very, very well. They can, they can just do this. They've proven that it's not sort of, particularly, it's not rocket science to actually make a distribution that people find easy to use and straightforward to use, and to apply that user interface across various other desktop environments as well. So you've got an IRC chat room if you need help from the community, you've got forums if you need help from the community, tutorials if you need help from the community, you've got a software manager, you've got an ideas pool, because they do listen to what people have to say. That's why the software bundle is so natural. That's why, the GIMP is there. That's why Firefox is there. That's why Thunderbird is there and not Evolve. Like, for some reason, I don't know who uses Evolve over Thunderbird. VLC is there again, as well as the regular video totem, I believe that is as well. I could be wrong, actually. It's got Pulse Audio volume control, which again it's a great way to take control over your sound devices. This is, this should be 101 UI, but it's not. So many distributions actually fail to get this right. And then you get Linux Mint that gets it right, and it gets it right in a stable way, time and time and time again, and have been getting it right for a long time now. So they've become a very reliable friend to the Linux world, and they have certainly shown us that there is a very strong market for the conservative UI that doesn't keep challenging our workflow or doing anything like that. It just, it's that reliable old workhorse that you can just rely on to do what it says it's going to do. So, like I say, again, Linux Mint couldn't surprise me anymore, and that's a good thing, because you shouldn't have to one day turn on your computer only to find out that your start button is just, flying all over the place like it does with Unity and all that kind of stuff. It's stable, it's straightforward, it's easy to use, and you can deploy it in a lot of places. Maybe not as many as Lubuntu, but certainly is not far behind. So that's about it from me today. The question I would like you guys to take away and perhaps answer in the comments section below is there really a requirement for an XFCE version and a Mate version? Now, considering that the XFCE version is actually put together by the community and by XFCE enthusiasts, we know that there's a demand for the XFCE version, because it's that kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. It wouldn't exist if there wasn't a demand for it, because it's demand and supply both come from the same place, the community. Mate comes from the development team, from what I understand. It's their second, or in some people's eyes, first flagship distribution. But to me, it's the two are identical enough that you don't need both of them. Could you scrap Mate and then just bring in XFCE into the fold? I think that would work. I think that would be a better use of the resources. Am I wrong? Am I right? What do you guys think? Do you think there's room for the full... Is it 4 now? Cinnamon, Mate, XFCE, KDE? I mean, are they going to bring in an LXDE one? Would be kind of cool, but... I don't know. Are they even going to bring in some kind of Fluxbox machination? Because that would be quite interesting. I remember when Fluxbuntu was a thing back a couple of years ago, when some people wanted to bring Fluxbox in as an Ubuntu Windows Manager desktop environment type of thing. That actually kind of looked like it could have done something, but never really took off. I guess people were happy with XFCE or whatever, or at least putting together their own Fluxbox setup. So anyway, guys, yeah, let me know down in the comment section below. That's about it from me today. Thanks very much for watching, and until next time, I've been Chris Ware, and you've been awesome. Take care now.